All right, Total Autopilot. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so
How'd
much.
how'd you pick that name?
Total Autopilot was actually a name that I've had for my marketing company when I started it back in the early 2000s. And it's just basically, everything done for you, sort of cruise, work on its own. So that's where TAP came from, TAP, Total Autopilot. It's also my name spelled backwards.
I never realized that
Yeah.
actually.
So everybody thinks that's why I did it. But no, actually, goes well with the hit too, because it's like tap hit, and it's sort of my training philosophy in a nutshell. Warm up and then hit. So, but
So
but
I
yeah, thanks for
guess,
having me on, brother. I really appreciate it.
yeah, of course. I guess we should start at the beginning. So I'm curious about like your coaching career, but at first I'm just curious about you as a bodybuilder. So when did you first decide you wanted to compete seriously in bodybuilding?
Yeah, so I was sort of had no choice. I was sort of born into it. So my father was a bodybuilder, and he was like he used to prepare people, I guess you could say, back then in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. I'm 55, so I've seen all the errors of bodybuilding pretty much. First was my first introduction to it was at Olympus Gym and Spa in Willingboro, New Jersey. I went to the gym at 7 years old, and I saw there was a bodybuilder there named Greg DeFaro, and he looked like Rocky. He was a pro, and he was doing 315 bent over rows, standing on the edge of a bench press, stretching all the way to the floor. And I just sat there in awe. And then, my dad owned a gym. He owned like a hardcore little iron pit in Riverside, New Jersey. And so, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I was always there backstage and all that stuff. And I started training, but I didn't have great genetics. I still don't really have great genetics. So I wasn't able to really put on a lot of size until I was probably about 18, 19 when I started eating better, training better, and using better supplements.
So when you say genetics, you're mainly referring to just your like muscle growth capability, not really like your insertions or anything like that. Because it seems like your
No,
shape
yeah,
isn't
yeah,
that bad.
yeah. Well, I would say both. Like when you get leaned out for a show, everything just glares at you. So genetically, yes, everything you said, ability to build muscle, probably a average, above average. But in terms of my shoulder width, my you know, the waist is a little bit thicker. So I had to really work hard, have a weak chest. I had good legs, decent shoulders, but everything else I had to sort of. So, but I competed for about 6 years, starting when I was about 19. Did about 15 shows back in the 90s.
Forgive me for assuming that you're enhanced now, just based on how jacked you are. But I'm just curious, like, how long were you natural, and when you were competing, did you do any shows as a natural, or did you decide to start using compounds before you were going to compete, like, as in a
Yeah,
purpose for competing?
yeah. I made the decision when I made the decision. I was training, like I said, from 14 to 18, probably a couple years in high school, just getting in trouble, slacking off, using my body in other ways. And then when I was 18, I trained for about a year natural. And then when I decided to do a show, I said, you know what, let me take some Anadrol. So I went from like 185, 190 natural, to looking like a water buffalo at 220 in about maybe 8 weeks. I gained some weight, but that was my, there wasn't a lot available like there is now. So I never did a bunch of PEDs, but I would have. I'd probably be dead if I was competing now.
I can only imagine how much less regulated the whole circle of PEDs was back then, especially when like bodybuilding was first starting to become popular. Like and I think back to like when I first started lifting, I started at like 15, and I thought that was early, but for you, like you genuinely were like born almost destined to end up becoming a bodybuilder. And when you say, like, you joke like you didn't have much of a choice in the matter, do you feel like you enjoyed it from such a young age, or do you feel like just being around it so long almost conditioned you to love it?
I'll be honest with you, Enzo. I think came out of dysfunction, to be honest with you.
I mean, that's how it always is.
Yeah, and so it was like something I looked like my father made it like a really big deal to be big and tough. and to be large and all that. So I was like, immediately took that identity on, and then always wanting to please, him and impress him. And I lived with him, by the way. My mom and dad were separated. So I was really trying to find out who I was, I guess you could say. So that's how for me, it was always out of an insecurity. I think you could say I wanted to be big. I wanted to look tough, and I went that whole route. And then when I started to compete in my 1920s, started at 19, 20 years old. So I started a full-time personal training business back then. I started to come out of that and see that bodybuilding for me was what God gave me to not only, work out, be healthy, but it really helped me in everything else in life because I was an entrepreneur. So it trained me to be disciplined. And as that happened, that identity became less and less dysfunctional, but still we're all still a little dysfunctional no matter how you look at it. Bodybuilders are just real being bodybuilders, competitors. Like the lifestyle that we live is a little weird, I guess you could say, to the normative, but it's definitely helps in everything to do with, and in my opinion, everything to do with life.
Yeah, some people call this like a pessimistic view, but when a lot of people ask me why I work out or why I bodybuild, the answer I give most of the time is like it's just a coping mechanism. Like for me, I find that the experience of putting in high amounts of effort at the gym consistently over time and that ending up accumulating within a physique that is only a result of your decisions, essentially. Like, it reminds me that I kind of have to remain accountable for other things in my life that I would fall short in if not for the gym.
It's like a song, right? You listen to a
Yeah.
song and then you're like, wow, this is really good music. It's really good lyrics. It's got a really good beat. You love the song, but then after you listen to it for a while, that song becomes yours. And it's
Yeah.
like, and it's your story. And you could listen to the same song and you may not even like it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's sort of what bodybuilding is for bodybuilders, I think. It's like they found that song, they've made it theirs, and it's different for everyone in terms of the psychological and the motivational aspects of it.
It's interesting, though, that we picked a hobby that is so fascinated with like vanity and almost what's perceived to be like materialist variables. But like, at the same time, I accept that this industry is by definition kind of shallow, but intrinsically to me, it feels so much deeper than that. And I just
On the
wonder how you
surface, it
reconcile with
is.
that.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It is, especially on the surface when it comes to, the commerciality of it, and what's advertised. And even as a trainer, and as you know, there's a big difference between somebody that goes to the gym and then says, oh, yeah, in 2 days, I got to go back to the gym, than somebody who's living the lifestyle 24/7 at home. And I'm sure you're the same. I haven't missed a meal in 15 years. I eat the same 5 meals every day. It's just like,
Yeah.
and it's just a part of who you are. And it that takes its own sort of form in everybody, I think. So it's different. But I definitely get what you're saying. It's not surface unless you're coming from that perspective, and then it gets very deep, for sure.
So I want to know, like, what was your early training looking like before any type of structured coaching or program? Like before you came in contact with Mike Mentzer or anything like that? What was your training looking like?
Yeah, I don't, you know what? It's a good question. I don't really remember, but it was just sort of like all over the place, just following, the magazines. I was introduced to the magazine. My dad had thousands, and I would read them, I would draw them, and I would just try all different types of stuff. Um, I was in the circle of people I was around growing up was very much into heavy duty Menser stuff before it was popular, you know. It got popular, I think, in like 90, 91 when Dorian said, yeah, I use Mike Mentzer's high intensity. And then everybody was like, yeah, let's cut back and let's train like Dorian. And so I've seen it change, and it's kind of cool how now that philosophy is sort of rising back up again. It's peaking its head. But I just was like everyone else, just a volume trainer, just looking at the big guys and saying, what do they do? Somebody would tell me this, and then I would do it. And then I just ended up doing I remember I started a full body workout 3 times a week. Like I followed Arthur Jones first.
Is that how you encountered high intensity training for the first time, like the Nautilus experiment and stuff?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like Nautilus machines were all, the first gym that I was a trainer at, the first day that I went there, actually went to a gym in Hopewell, and I went to the owner and I said, I'm a trainer. I'll work here for free. You have a morning shift open. I'll work for free from 5 to 9. You let me personal train everybody in here, give them a free session. He goes, sure, but I need you to pick up some equipment for me. First day I go, he gets a full line of used first generation Nautilus, like 50 machines. We went into North Jersey. So I got to use all of that first generation Nautilus, where you're talking like the pec deck right to the
Wow,
press.
the single joint pec deck with
Yeah,
the
and then
bent
you got the
arm.
pull over right with the lap pull down right in front of you, and Arthur
My
Jones
favorite
a
one.
narrow grip.
Did you get to use the hip extension machine?
Oh, yeah, yep, we had
I
that.
love that. I just want to use that so bad. I see it all the time,
Yeah,
and I want to use it so bad.
yeah, I haven't seen anything like that around in years.
I don't know why not. It seems like it just seems like an essential. Like that's just a movement that people do all the time. Why wouldn't you want to have a pin loaded machine for it?
Yeah, they're so big. Those things are
What
so block. The
the hip
Nautilus
extension
machine.
machine?
Yeah, are you
All of
talking
them?
about the one where you lay down and you push you get the pad under your leg there and it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah.
straighten your body out like.
Right, right, yeah. So yeah, that's basically how I got in it. Mike, Mentzer after 80 81, he fell off the scene, because he was upset.
Because of the
And
Olympia, right?
and then he started writing again, I think in the late 80s, early 90s for maybe Iron Man or Muscle Media 2000 or something like that. So he had a little ad in the back of his of Muscle Media, like tiny little ad. I called it, he answered the phone. And I had to endure about 2 hours of his whole philosophy and all objectivism. And he was he loved to talk. But I signed up with him, and yeah, it was really a great thing because I also started training people under him as well too, and that was really productive for me. It gave me a little bit of a niche.
Wait, so what year was this that you first met Mike Mentzer?
I trained with him from 92 to 95. And when I say I trained with him, I only trained physically with him 2 to 3 times a year, but we used to do remote over the phone once a week, and just meticulous. I would send him every little detail of my workout program, and he would analyze it, and time under tension, how many reps in reserve. I mean, everything he would want to know. He was extremely detailed to the point where he had me working out once every 3 days. So I would work out one day. Let's say I would do back and buys, and then I would take 3 days off. And then I would do chest and tries, 3 days off. And I would do cycles of that throughout my off season and my prep.
So
So
you never did more than one times a week frequency with him.
say again?
You never did more than one times a week frequency with him.
No. You mean our body part?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, sometimes even once every 10 days.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's usually what it was. And then, I liked his stuff, and I studied it and everything. And I sort of, went off a little bit from it, but the basic principles were really helpful for me to put on size. I think I went from my first show, I was like 176 and 92. And then 2 years later, I was I was 198, but I had gotten up to 270 in the off season. And so it was productive. And then from there, I continued to grow.
So what did he change first from what you were training, if you can recall? Like, it was probably just the volume. That was the biggest thing for you to
Pat,
change, right?
Pat, call me in 3 weeks. Don't do a single thing. Don't walk past the weight. I said, all right. So that's the first thing he had me do was take off for 3 weeks and let my body recuperate. And then what he did was he gave me, and this is one of the things that I don't really do as a trainer, as a coach, is he gave me a blanket, like sort of prescribed program in the beginning, one set. And again, that's great. I believe that there needs to be a starting point, but I agree with that. But now I sort of take it individual by individual. But the same philosophy of cutting back is tremendous. And if anybody's watching this, you want to gain weight, gain muscle. That's the first thing I do when I train anybody is typically cut them back from going 2 times a week per body part to one, and instantly they recuperate and they get fuller, they get bigger, get stronger. So that's a lot of what he was doing. He didn't really give you a lot of stuff. He didn't really connect the dots a lot in terms of here's what we're going to do. He mostly just took it week by week and then made changes depending on how I was feeling and what my strength was and that sort of thing.
So that's interesting that you mentioned that reducing the frequency is what allowed you to recover best because just purely
Well, it's really
anecdotally,
volume, Enzo, but you're right. Frequency, yes, but the higher level is
right?
volume over overall volume. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the reason why I'm making the distinction is because, like, for me, I see like my training philosophy in like three distinct arcs. Like when I first started training, it was just like an entry gym bro philosophy. And then once I got out of that phase for a while and I beat my body up, I actually encountered high intensity training and I went full hardcore into that philosophy for like 2 years. So then I dropped my volume, I dropped my frequency. I was barely training, barely working out, but when I was training, I was going to failure on every set, past failure, intensifiers, but I was doing no more than 1, 2, 3 sets per body part a week. And I made much better progress than I did in that original phase of me just doing kind of whatever.
Yeah.
But I started to reach a plateau, as everybody does after a certain point. And what changed for me is I've retained that low volume approach, but I've just increased the amount of times I train and exercise per week. So I will do one set, straight set, and then I'll repeat that 2 to 3 times a week. And I find that I'm able to recover and progress the fastest when I do these low volumes, but I just do them more often. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you can consider that
No, I
volume or
see that's
frequency.
something that, like Mentzer would say, no, you're wasting your time, Enzo, no,
Right.
I don't mean to make fun of him at all. I'm just, he's not making fun of him, but that's what he would say.
Mm.
But I agree with that. Like, I think again, see, I guess you could say my philosophy is that, everything in exercise works because of adaptation, right? I mean, if I took somebody right now, put them in the gym and just did water bottles and rubber bands, and they're going to get some results. And that's same with a professional bodybuilder. Okay. If he comes into the gym right now and probably, changes up his complete workout program, he buys in the high intensity or whatever, he's going to get a bump. But what do you do when that stops working? So my whole thing is it's not about what to do. It's about what do you do when what you're doing stops working. And so when you do that, then what I would do is keeping the high intensity philosophy, you mess around with the volume. So if you now know you're strong as an ox, you're a natural guy, 3 times a week, with one set, I think that's a pretty neat experiment. I've done that before with arms, especially because they don't need a lot. And I thought always like, well, I do 1 or 2 sets per body or for biceps. That's it. What if I did that on Monday and Thursday instead of just Wednesday? Because I'm recuperated by then. And you just got to make sure that, all of this fits into the big picture of overall recuperation, to the nervous system, all that other stuff. So that way, so what I'm saying is as long as you're okay there and you're not grossly overtrained, I think that that would probably work. I mean, why wouldn't it? You're using the basic principle, you're monitoring your recovery time. And so yeah, I think that's pretty neat.
Now, the one other thing that I have kind of fallen away from in regards to Mike Mentzer, which kind of hurts me because I am very emotionally attached to it, is like intensifiers. Like I really love doing intensifiers and I really love training until I just like cannot stand the pain anymore.
Yeah.
I enjoy that so much, but I find that when I do straight sets, either to failure or maybe even sometimes leaving a rep in the tank, which is really a lot of people don't like that, but I find that I get so much stronger and I'm able to recover and be able to do like 3 times in a week with certain exercises. Like I feel like I wouldn't be able to train 3 times a week for certain exercises if I did a drop set on one of
Right.
those workouts.
Right.
So
I mean, yeah. I'm
that's
sorry.
something I'm curious about. Like, where do you see the place for intensifiers? Do you think it makes more sense in a contest prep situation when closer to a show? Do you think it makes more sense in like a muscle growth context when you're maybe in the off season? I'm just curious, like, what's the application for that for you?
Yeah, I think so. With the intensifiers, I think number one is the what you said, or I should say what you implied, is that you can't do intensifiers every single workout because if you do, you're going to overtrain. And so what I typically do with my clients, because I typically train my prep clients like once or twice a week in person. And when they're with me, as long as they're progressing, as long as they're not overtraining, and as long as everything's going and pointing in the right way, I'll do those intensifiers. We'll rotate body parts. So one week, one day they'll have a, a crazy superset or drop set or force negatives or whatever with me. And then they'll go on their own. Maybe they'll do some intensifiers. It's going to be nowhere near what they're getting with me. And then like right now I'm with a prep client, and for 2 or 3 weeks, we just did straight sets because I've been destroying his legs. So I said, let's do rotate hams one week, quads the next week. We'll just do straight sets to failure, and then we go with it. So it's all a matter of getting to know the person, watching what they're doing in terms of their reps. Is their strength going up? Are their reps going up? How does their condition look? And then I may be a little bit on the other side from you. I like to push, 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 push. And then I like to pull back and recuperate. But I don't train 2 days, typically don't train 2 days in a row when that happens with the intensifiers. But yeah, I think that we need to do the intensifiers with high intensity because our body's already adapted to that failure. Okay. We're already adapted to the trauma that we've been giving it. Now, what do you do? Now, what you do is you regulate that intensity with it. There's different intensifiers. You know that. I mean, there's severe intensifiers and there's minor intensifiers like forced
Yeah.
reps. So, yeah.
Interesting. Does your take on that kind of contradict Mike's? I'm sure if he were here today, he would
Yeah.
be
It beat
full
me
on
up.
intensifier.
Yeah.
So he's very
Yeah.
pro intensifier.
Yeah, Mike is very much, very much to one set. He would, but my thing is knowing what to do with a specific individual, because I know what their past is in terms of what they've been doing training. I know what they've been eating. I know how they've been feeling. I'm not just going to give them okay, just do one set. What I love about Mike Mentzer's one set is it's the most logical thing I believe bodybuilding has to offer, because it's a starting point. We were talking about it the other day in the posing room, and that, all philosophies have an axiom. All philosophies have a starting point, whether it's logical or illogical. That some of them are illogical, right? But with weight training and high intense bodybuilding, you have to have that starting point. And I think if God put down like another Adam who never worked out before and is just a human being that never trained, I would start him with one set. And then I would say, I can only go forward. But if I was to train you, I would analyze everything that you're doing and I wouldn't bring you down to one set. I think we would probably waste some time. You'd probably atrophy a little bit. Maybe not. Maybe you would maintain, but I don't know if you would gain. But I would cut you back. I would say, I'm just cutting you back half. I would look at your physique, I'd look at your program, and then I would always pull back and watch recovery. So
You'd be
that's,
surprised at how little I do.
yeah, no, for based on what you said, that's pretty good. What you're saying, one set or, 2 sets.
But it's like my quads. I do I just recently started doing presses. I did leg extension. It wasn't even 3 times a week. It was twice a week for one set. Like you saw when I do the whole like rubber band mess, because I don't want to do it often, like because it annoys me. So I just do it like twice a week, one set, and my quads are like overwhelmingly a strong point on my physique to the
Yeah.
point where like I want them to kind of be smaller.
So what would you do when they stop growing, when they stop responding, when they, you have 2 choices. You could either cut back, or you can, I know because your philosophy, maybe it's add volume, maybe it's add a set. There's seasons where I do, have my guys do more than just 2. I usually do 2 sets, 2 working sets.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll have them do 1, sometimes I'll have them do 3. But you have to either intensify to break through to break through the adaption, or you have to reduce
My
or
philosophy
increase the
would
volume.
usually be I don't like to do more than one set per exercise because I would rather do multiple exercises to bias different regions. So if I wanted to bring up something that was lagging, if I were only doing, say, a pec fly for the pecs and that was hitting like the sternal region of the pecs, I would maybe incorporate some type of an incline movement where my arms are a little bit more tucked for the upper pec fibers, like maybe trying to train motor units that are exclusive to different like joint angle,
Right.
because that would then possibly add a little bit extra stimulus. My only concern with the intensifiers, that once you reach technical failure, you've hit full recruitment essentially, right? So all of the highest threshold motor units have already been recruited and fatigued to the point where they're essentially turned off. That's the reason why you've reached failure, because you can no longer reach the force demands
Right.
of the set, right? So
Yeah.
if you were to do more reps past failure, wouldn't it be so that the only motor units that you're recruiting would be on the lower end of the motor unit pool, which would be less prone to hypertrophy because they are lower threshold and more type 1?
Right. Right. I don't know, Enzo. I'm not going to act like I would know
Okay, fair.
that
Yeah, I might have.
question, but from what you're saying, again, to me, that would go back into my very basic brain of overtraining.
Mhm.
Because that's really what you're talking about, overtraining.
Yes.
That's what
Yeah, yeah,
Mentzer would
basically.
say. You're overtraining, you hit the
Yeah.
nail on the head, the nail went in, but now you're banging on the nail, right?
Yeah.
So my answer to that would be have to be tested, because I would say to you, do the intensifiers for a season. Are they pushing you forward into more strength or not? And then if the intensifiers aren't doing that, then I would cut back, because again, after you do the job, that whole philosophy you just talked about has to be applied now to everything. How do you justify that in terms of even with forced reps? So you're just saying full momentary muscular failure, no assistance, no forced reps. Job is
Technically, it would be technically like people say that activation plateaus before failure, and technically, if we're talking about proportional stimulus to fatigue ratio,
yeah,
that last 0 RIR rep technically wouldn't really be worth it either, because the only thing that we would really need to stimulate muscle growth is high degrees of mechanical tension and motor unit recruitment. So in theory, we could just train very close to failure and then stop 1 to 2 reps shy of failure if we're able to gauge that properly. And that's the key point, if we're able to gauge that properly, because most
form,
people are,
all
yeah,
that.
like I'm talking about, even advanced experienced lifters are very, very, very poor at judging true RIR, because
Yeah,
every time you really think that you're nearing failure, you can almost always get a couple more reps, and you really
right.
don't know when you can get no more reps until you can't do any more reps, and it's
Well, that's
just
the big, what is failure? And it's very
yeah,
arbitrary, or not arbitrary,
yeah,
subjective to each person, as you know. I mean, if I take somebody on as a client, it takes me at least 2 to 3 weeks to teach them to train in the pain zone. And so
yes.
failure for them in the first beginning is much different than failure for them at the end. So that's what I was going to say. Like adding intensifiers is almost for me like adding that second set. Do I really need it? I don't know. Do I really need the intensifier? Well, I don't know. Is this person using strict form? Are they fooling me by, or whatever? Are they really nailing it? And that's why I like to use pre-exhaust as well a lot, because pre-exhaust, even within a set pre-exhaust, for instance, a leg extension pre-exhaust, where I go really super slow the first 5 reps and then go to the regular tempo, sort of pre-exhausting the quads a little bit with that slow, sort of intense isometric sort of thing. And same with squats. So I would do that, leg extensions to squats. Because I know when you get to squats after a set of failure of leg extensions, it's going to be everything. Okay. And I have a better gauge now to judge the RIR, everything else, everything all across the board. I can judge it when I do the pre exhaust. So I like pre exhaust as an intensifier, but I also just like it as a regular part of my training, because and instruction, because a lot of it prevents injury, and it really nails the muscle, brings all attentiveness to that muscle during the set.
It is interesting too. I find it to be significantly harder to gauge RIR the higher a rep range you choose. The lighter the weight, the more reps you're doing. Like if you're doing sets of 20, 25, you could reach rep 22, and the metabolite accumulation is just making your quads burn so much that
Yeah,
you feel like if you were to do another one, you would collapse. When in reality, you might have 10 more.
right.
But that's why I also tend to choose like very low rep ranges. So I'm curious, like, what's the rep ranges that you use for your clients most of the time?
6 to 12 is
Okay.
what I go with. But I'll vary that. If they're
Yeah.
plateaued and they're not overtrained, I may throw them up to 20 reps on let's
Right.
say on
Yeah.
a triple set or a giant set.
And I think on a high rep set like that, you might as well go to failure because it's going to be very hard to tell
Right.
how close you're getting.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. It would all, it depends. For legs, I like to go a little higher, 15 reps, 16 reps, 20 reps. Um, and like for me, legs, it's like, no holds barred, because in order to get my experience, been doing this 40 years, and my experience is that unless you go to the dark place and tap into that pain zone, deep muscle fibers, and your legs aren't going to grow beyond, they're not going to get freakish. They'll get big, but they're not going to get freakish. You start bringing your legs into the pain zone and go beyond like this kill, you're going to get those deep, deep fibers, and you're going to get that size.
People always wonder why they love training biceps and they hate training quads. If we were to think about just the force capacity of the biceps and the quads, right? The biceps have such a smaller cross-sectional area than the quads if we're to talk about just the amount of motor units that they have
Yeah.
capable. So the way I see it is I could reach full failure with the biceps and pick a weight that is really maximally challenging my biceps. But no matter what that is, less than a third of the total amount of force that my quads are capable. And you can feel that when you do something like a leg extension and compare that to a bicep curl, the amount of pain that you feel is increasing exponentially with the amount of force that you can create. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely true that people underestimate their RIR, especially on leg exercises, because they don't realize how strong their legs really are. And we're never really forced into these high intensity situations because we're walking with our legs all the time. Our legs are as conditioned to movement as anything else in our body, basically.
Sure.
So
You can
that's
look
what's
across the whole animal kingdom. I mean, our legs are designed to run long distances, to carry heavy things. And so if you're not able to go in and not only just take it into the pain zone, but do the right exercises into the pain zone, you got to try, in my opinion, you need to have some heavy compound exercises in order to grow your legs. You just do
I
leg,
think heavy is the key word for sure. The heavy is the key word.
yeah, you do squats and hacks and stuff, right? As well.
So like barely though,
I
like
thought I
I don't
thought
know.
I saw you doing them yesterday.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
did that yesterday because I was with Nick.
Oh yeah,
Because
big Nick.
Nick trains like a madman, so I was
He's a
training like
beast.
him
Yeah.
just for fun. But no, I sparingly do presses. Like I did the Cybex squat press like once a week or so for a while, and then I cut it, and then I was doing just a leg extension for like 2 months, and then I just did the squat press a week ago.
I think you should work them in, but do them with leg extensions first. So you go to leg extensions to
Mhm.
failure, right to barbell squats. Put the belts, the supports up, so you could just fail at the bottom and just go nice and controlled, strict. See, a lot of my older guys I do this with, and their legs grow because there's nothing like barbell squats. But for me, I tried squatting 405. I did it 5 times about 5, 6 months ago. My hips, my knees, my back couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I mean, I got a good leg. So now at my age, I hit leg extensions, but I do it with my younger guys too to save them. I don't do it all the time. Uh, the guys that are resilient, I'll throw the big weights on there, but pre-exhaust with extensions, really just an amazing leg builder, and it'll boost your squat up too.
If I'm ever gonna do a press though, I have always been in the camp of doing leg extensions first
Yeah, yeah,
because it makes it just so much easier, like you were saying, to reach failure practically. Because unless you have perfect technique, doing a free weight exercise with low rep ranges is like a death wish.
yeah.
And you
Right.
have to really be very
Young and
present when
healthy.
you're doing, yeah, and you have to be very like mentally present when you're doing the
Oh yeah,
exercise. So if you were to do something like leg extensions of failure and then put 225 or 3 plates on the back squat, it's going to be significantly easier for me to reach failure as opposed to me starting off with the squat and then having to work up to a heavier weight that I'm actually going to have to mentally prepare for when
yeah,
I go. And so that's why honestly, I'm not a very big proponent of lower rep ranges with free weight exercises that demand a lot of stability. Like I don't do much of them anyway. I'm mainly a machine guy. Like you've seen me. Like I just strap myself to the machine and stack it. So that's the only situation where I'm really gonna recommend most people to go into the 4 to 6 rep range, which is where I stay most of the
yeah,
time.
yeah. Got you.
So I was curious. It seems like personally, my my issue with developing my physique has been the opposite of most people and most of your clients too. So it seems like everybody struggles with legs. I try to prevent my legs to grow and they accidentally grow, but I try desperately to grow my arms and I struggle with that. So I would like to know, what would you or Mike Mentzer say to me if I wanted to bring out my arms and maybe pause my leg growth for a little bit?
The first thing that I would do is cut you back, especially on arms, because there's been times where I tried not training arms other than through chest and back. Obviously, they get hit. And when I do back, I do a lot of underhand, putting the biceps in the stronger position. So they're getting that. So I would probably go through a workout with you, see what you were doing, make sure all that's good, and then cut you back. And then I'd probably have you just train everything single arm, because I found when you really concentrate, I should isolate each arm, you can come any inconsistencies, because a lot of times you have one arm stronger and we're doing everything. So I would do just like what you're doing, but I would probably switch to some one arm stuff. And I would probably do some pre-exhaust as well, like, or maybe some heavy, heavy negative work at the end. So I'd maybe have you do your regular tricep workout, and then let's go over to the close grip and just do negatives, 5 to 6 reps, or French curl negatives, skull crusher negatives. Those are the ones I found. I mean, I don't know. I would definitely cut back and add some intensifiers. That's probably what I would try.
Interesting. Yeah, because you know what? Maybe the approach should be just to treat my arms the way that I treat my legs. It's almost like just train them so infrequently, like I don't care about them growing, and just when I hit them very hard. Because it's almost like I think too much about trying to train my arms, and I'm trying to meticulously train every region, and maybe that might be overdoing it.
I've done it. I've done everything with my arms, and I've probably had 5 clients where I've done everything to try to get their arms to grow, where the only thing that worked was like 1 or 2 sets for biceps. That's it. And maybe train them once every 2 weeks. And the results, they would get results that way. That's what it is for me. One of my arms were, I have like, I don't think any, my biceps are terrible. They're short and they're not full. Those guys with those big knotty biceps when their arms are straight, I don't have that. And so it's very hard even for me to train my biceps. The pain the lactic acid buildup. I mean, after 6 reps, it could be 20 pounds, and I'm like, so I'll just sometimes train them once every 2 weeks. Today, I was supposed to train them. I did back. I didn't train them. I had a bicep pump. So I said, I'm not going to train him this week. I'm going to see what happens. I think too, Enzo, is that you switch around. Like most people
Mm,
do everything from the bottom with biceps, curls here. Switch around, do some close grip chins, do
right.
some close grip pull downs, do some drag curls, throw it and flip it upside down. The best I've gotten is from on the dip machine, the assisted dip, supinated grip, holding at the top, coming down nice and slow, really just avoids any elbow. If you have elbow issues, avoids all that. Tendon issues, avoids all that, and really hits the biceps differently.
One thing I was experimenting with, I'm curious what your thoughts on it would be. You saw me using that cuff, the Betterfly that I was testing out. I interviewed Paul on my channel, the inventor of it. I've been incorporating that and replacing my rows and pull downs recently with that cuff. So I don't know if you saw how I did it on the Prime machine. I would hook it up so that I'm basically imitating a pull down or a row, but I'm removing the elbow joint and the bicep. So I've been experimenting with only doing single joint exercises for my lats and upper back, and then being able to dedicate more like strict and pure volume to the biceps and
Yeah.
triceps, because now that recruitment is not getting like clouded in the presses and pull downs. I'm curious if you think that would be worthwhile, or you think just reducing the
Are
volume will
you
probably do me better.
advocating for that for like everything, or just for like from now on, you're going to do that
No.
with that, just going to work it in?
No. I'm literally just experimenting with it
No,
and
I think
seeing
it's
how it
great
works.
as long as you work it in, because again, when you do a pull down, you're using arms, forearms, grip
Yeah.
strength, everything. So I would definitely work them in. Wouldn't do them every time, but I've been experimenting lately with force negatives with that. Is when people do the
Mm,
pull down, instead of pulling this way where it's all bicep, just getting under their arm and pushing as hard as I can up, which
mm.
is just maintaining that one single joint, which is phenomenal. And so I think that would work really. I would say that would work even better with the way that you're doing it. But no, I think it's interesting for sure. I saw you doing it. I thought that was pretty cool.
You gotta try that. Next time I
Yeah,
see you at the gym, when we had a workout together, we gotta
I
we
would
gotta
love
do
that. Yeah.
an exercise with that. Cause it honestly feels so different. I mean, you have to take any type of mind muscle connection with a grain of salt, because I know it's not a direct kind of indicator of what's going on within the muscle, but you can feel when you're doing that pull down, like there's really nothing else that could possibly be moving that
Like
weight other than
pullovers.
your lats.
But I mean, you're
Yeah.
activating chest with pullovers a little bit with the
At
Nautilus
the
pullover.
top, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great.
That's why I'll consider like top half pullovers on that Nautilus machine like a chest exercise more than a back exercise. I
Yeah.
don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah. I mean, we used to do them like that with the dumbbell back
Yeah.
before the machines, but the what were you saying? So yeah, so you strap it in here, you say under your elbow, is that correct? And then you pull down. This is like the pullover
Yeah.
machine, but you're doing one arm at a time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's different than the pullover because you can attach it to like a cable and almost like emulate a row in the way that you execute it. And
Right.
that's why I like it so much. It's like I feel like I'm doing a row, but it's like my hands don't exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Cool.
really it was made though for chest exercises. Like it's supposed to replace presses.
Like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Interesting.
The Yeah, it's pretty interesting. He's gonna come out with a final product. It's gonna be like adjustable. The one that he has isn't adjustable. It's just kind of like a hook thing, so it doesn't fit to your arm. That's my one criticism of it. But
Yeah.
so, do you think if Mike Mentzer were coaching today with modern understanding, do you think his thinking would evolve in certain aspects, or was he kind of stuck to his ways?
No, his thinking would never change. Not a chance. If anything, he would probably have a lot more reinforcement in terms of studies and knowledge and things like that. I don't think he would necessarily, what you're saying is the assumption there is that for him, it'd be like, so you're saying something's wrong with what I'm doing. What
Well,
would
no,
I,
because even you say that you kind of evolved past a pure Mike Mentzer approach.
yeah, yeah. And again, I was always sort of skeptical with it, but it worked so well for me the first 2 years because I wasn't used to it. My body was just overtrained. It worked great. But I don't know. I would probably say no, it wouldn't change. I think he would probably just try to continue to put people in, in positions where he could show them, look like Dorian Yates, those types of guys. But yeah, he would always be challenged with those things. And I wish he took more of a stance. Like I said, principally, I love what he talks about. But then, when you're bringing it out tangibly in the gym, there's so many other factors. And that goes with every single prescribed workout program. There can't be, in my opinion. There's just so many different factors with that individual. And that's what really a good coach should be able to identify is what are those unique factors and be able to stick to the science and at the same time adapt to the genetics and obviously body type.
That actually leads me into one of my last questions I had for you is like, what are some of those things within a client's program that remain constant no matter who the client is? And what are the factors that are variable based on the individuality of that client?
Well, that's a great question. So, what are the things that are just always the constant? For me, training to failure, strict form, slow, controlled reps. Those are fixed. Pause it at, let's say at the in the contraction and, at the bottom of the movement as well too. I like to do for most exercises. They would be the constants for me.
How do you feel about dead stopping? I like that. Like, see, I prefer that to pausing.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it's just, you mean like a 2 second?
Yeah, it's almost like before every rep on the leg extension, I love to do this. Like I'll control the eccentric on the way down and then let it just softly fall back into its starting position. And then once it completely stops, like dead, then I'll like start the rep over. So it's
Now
almost like
that's
I'm
what I'm
doing
talking about.
individual reps. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The pause, I like to use a lot of midpoint pauses just because it keeps people honest in terms of the mind muscle connection. Obviously, it's an intensifier. It keeps the form, keeps everybody strict. But hard stops depends on what it is. Hack squat, yes. Leg press, yes. Leg extension, yes. But I call interchangeable My pauses and my hard stops are pretty much interchangeable. So it depends. I want everybody to do it like you just said.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my I don't know. So, do you have people pause at the top on every rep too? That's one thing that I kind of I find it difficult on certain things. Like on the leg extension, I don't think I'd be capable. I think my knee would just pop off.
Yeah, it's not a pause for the sake of pause.
Yeah,
It's a pause, slow down to get a full contraction to try to recruit as many fibers and tear up as many fibers as you can. So if I'm doing a dumbbell press, it's not, well, pause at the top. It's get it at the top, squeeze your elbows as hard as you can together, and then come right back down. Don't just sit, pause for the sake of pausing, because then it could take off of the
yeah.
focus of the intensity off the muscle.
I
And
find a lot of
pauses
people
can be
will.
rest too. So,
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what you want. I wouldn't have, in those exercises, no.
Yeah, it depends on where you're pausing and for how long you're
Right.
pausing.
There you
Because
go.
unlike a bench press at the top, you could sit there all day, and that would be like resting in between reps.
Pausing at
So,
the
what are
bottom
the
of the bench, like an inch before the chest and a midpoint, I think is productive. It can be productive.
So what are those things that do change then, depending on the individual factors of a person's physique, maybe biomechanics, anatomy, structure,
Yeah, all of the
genetics?
above. I mean, every exercise is going to be different. Now, I shouldn't
Mm,
say every. I should say a lot of exercises are going to be different depending on what the person needs, their body type, their preference, and so forth and so on. And the volume and frequency are going to change. It's not, like I said, it's not always one or two sets. It depends on where we're at, what we're doing, where are they at in their prep, what their goals are, things like that.
it's like do you handle diet usually or just training for most of your
Yeah, I do
clients?
diet as well.
That's the one thing I feel like that's very individual as well. Like the way
Yeah.
that people digest certain things, I feel like that could impact their energy level. Like do you stay meticulous with that, or do you, like, in the sense that, do you write out meal plans, like strict structured meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, they have everything pre-thought of for them, or do
Yeah.
you kind of give like a flexible dieting approach?
I do both. It depends on what they want. For my more experienced guys and gals, I'll give them like a basic, 3-day meal plan, 5 meals a day with substitutions, macro substitutions. But if they are, some people too that I've been training for a while, I could just say bump your carbs up, and 20 grams on this meal or whatever. So I do everything because most bodybuilders want everything done for them. And rightly so, because they want to be as best and as perfect as they can. So I'll give them, as rigid as I can, and I'll let them know where they can sort of substitute and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's most important for prep, obviously, as well, is being really locked in on somebody's metabolism, body type, how they handle certain foods and what their skin's like, their fat levels, all that stuff.
See, what I'm most curious about as a current coach, but aspiring to be a prep and contest coach, I'm curious about how that peak goes down from your perspective. So it's kind of one of the last things I want to touch on. Like,
Meaning contest week peak.
yeah, exactly. Like right before the show, how does those last few weeks, how do you structure that?
Yeah, well, again, it all depends upon, am I coming in to rescue a prep or am I coming in, do I have you from the beginning? Because if I
Yeah,
have
you've
you
had it
from the
from the beginning.
beginning, it's like an airplane. Okay. We're going to take off to get up to our cruising altitude. And that takeoff can mean a lot of different things. It's going to definitely mean give me exactly what you're eating. I want to know what your baseline is. And then typically what I'll do is feed you for a couple of weeks. And then once we get up at 30,000 feet, I'm now looking at prep week. So whether it's 18, 20 weeks out, I'm looking to land without you even knowing the wheels are touching the ground, right? We love that when a plane does that. A lot of times those landings are rough, because either the client's not doing what they're telling you they're doing, or you're rescuing a prep and you didn't, there's the other coach or whatever the case may be, 3 weeks out is, having them do 20 minutes of cardio 3 times a week and they're still, have a lot of body fat on them. So that's that. Now, when we get into the prep week, I don't do a lot of crazy stuff. I do have a couple secret things that that I do
Obviously, yeah.
with my clients, but everything has to do with the individual, right? So for me, it's like you can get grandma's tomato sauce recipe and you can cook it and stir it up and you could taste it and be like, this doesn't taste like grandma's recipe. What did I do wrong? So as a good prep coach, that's every client. Okay. What I do is I sort of feel out that person. I taste the sauce, right? What is it? What do they need? Do they need a little salt? Does it need pepper? Or if the sauce is terrible, you could throw adobo in there and make it taste good, right? So it's all a matter of what they need. But typically I do a carb depletion, depending on where they're at is the severity of that. And I don't restrict a lot of water. I don't restrict a lot of sodium and that sort of stuff. Again, it depends on what the person needs. And I'm just a big believer in getting ready early, because if you're ready early and you look good and you're lean, you're in shape. There's really not much at the amateur level, local shows and things like that. If you come in shape and ripped, you'll be able to get that forgiveness. Maybe if you didn't fill out as much or whatever, that you don't have a lot of size, your legs are smaller, whatever the case is, it's all conditioning. So since I don't have a lot of national IFBB pro people, I go specifically always with everybody for conditioning, but I err on the side of getting my guys super peeled. And so that way I know that they're going to do well. But yeah, carb depletion, carb up, and day of the show, day before the show is all a matter of sort of feeling out what they need. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure like once you get closer to show day, your job becomes much more like emotional, like as kind of like a support than just like a programmer. Like
Yeah,
you're
I
really
love
behind
it.
the scenes in
Yeah, I
the
love it.
beginning of the prep.
Yeah. Would you say behind the scenes?
Yeah, like you're more behind the scenes, like structuring, programming stuff in the off season at the beginning of prep. But as it gets closer to prep, I feel like you're more there as the emotional support. Like,
You are. When you get, I love that aspect of coaching. That's one of the reasons why I do it, because I don't compete anymore. It sort of lets me live vicariously through all the people. But it's stressful, man. I mean, you've dieted before, 24 weeks of suffering, dieting, wondering, imagining. I mean, there's so many emotions, there's so many nerves. And so for me, I'm a very calm person. And so I like to bring my my clients in super calm. There's a fix for everything. If there's a fix for it, if there's not, then you messed up, or I messed up, or whatever the case is. So I try to keep them calm, try to keep them incredibly polished. So all the work is done. Posing, like that's the big thing. If you have to go up and make a presentation in front of 1,000 people and you don't look at your notes until 2 days before, you're going to be nervous. But if I told, hey, Enzo, get up in front of 1,000 people and talk about hypertrophy, you wouldn't even need notes because you do it all the time. You can get up there and that's what bodybuilding, you got to let them know that, keep them encouraged. And the best way to do that is have them be in shape and be polished with their stage presence.
wow. Thank you so much for coming on today, man. I feel like you've given our viewers so much to think about. It's so refreshing to hear this perspective and to hear your take on Mike Mentzer's whole high intensity philosophy, because I truly believe that regardless of whether or not he was right about everything in his time, the foundation of the certain questions that he asked made us as lifters think about things that led us to the conclusions we've gotten to today.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the one set method is so important because if you only have one set, you're forced to treat that one set with the utmost importance because
right.
it's the only opportunity you have to grow muscle. So with that mentality, even if you were to later on in your career add a second set, maybe even do 3 sets, it's having that mentality that you only have a few finite opportunities to make this adaptation. I think that's the key lesson from Mike Mentzer. And I
Yeah,
think you're carrying that on every day. And I
that's what
think
I'm
that's very
trying to do. I
important.
appreciate that. Yeah, like that's why I don't go the other direction. But those to me, what you just said is some of the gems that he's left the sport, and it's for us now to just take it and try to make it better, like what you're doing. With the studying that you're doing, and these types of podcasts are super helpful. So I really appreciate you having me on. You encourage me in the gym all the time, seeing you train like an animal and strictly, which is good. But yeah, I mean, if anybody like anybody's listening, I give a free session, you know, obviously at Iron, but I also do online coaching as well. And so if anybody's interested in that, they can go to my page, Total Autopilot, or tapbodybuilding.com. Hope you don't mind me plugging myself. My website's tapbodybuilding.com.
All right. Well, if you learned anything important today, make sure to drop it in the comments. I'll see you guys in the next video.